the holiday season just finishing up, I was feeling a little sentimental and figured I would do 2 videos about recipes from my grandmother. The first one we're going to do is from my grandma Predmore. There's a little bit of a story behind this recipe book. My cousin Lisa sent me the PDF files for the recipes in here, and I had it binded and drew a little cover for it and gave it to my 2 other sisters. This grandma unfortunately passed away in 91 and I was born in 95, so I never met her. This will be the first time I'm cooking one of her recipes, so I'm a little excited about that. My younger sister, who also has a copy of this, never got the opportunity to meet her. My older sister is 16 years older than me, so she met her and has memories of her. I hear only good things about this woman, so I'm excited to try her recipe out. We will be making fruit cocktail cake. All right, the first thing I'm going to need is 2 cups of flour. I will need the flour to flour the pan here in a little bit. Okay, next ingredient is 1.5 cups of sugar. I believe it says 1 tablespoon of soda, which this is powder. Good thing I caught that. Double check this is baking soda since obviously I can't read. 1 tablespoon. The next thing we need to add is a 303 can of fruit cocktail and its juice. I had to look up what a 303 can is. Apparently it's common in older recipes. It's just like a standardized way of labeling cans. In horticulture, we have something similar for pot sizes, so that's what I can relate it to. A 303 can is about 2 cups or 15 to 17 ounces. So this is a 15.25 ounce can of fruit cocktail. I got it in heavy syrup. Based on what I know of recipes around the time this was written, or the time I assume it was written, heavy syrup is probably the preferred kind. So we'll dump that in there. Trying to get all the fruit out. All right, now to combine this. Here's our little fruit mixture as I'm combining it. I'll show you once it's completely combined, kind of what we're working with. I think this is going to be a pretty dense cake. Here's what it looks like combined. This doesn't look as bad as I thought it was going to when I first started mixing it. I'm assuming the mixing process helped squeeze some juice out of the fruit in there, which made it a little moisture. It looked like it was going to be very dry. So I'm glad that it came together as well as it did. This cake recipe doesn't have any eggs in it for the batter, so you could, in theory, eat it raw like this. As far as I know, you could eat it raw like this. I don't know, it tastes pretty good. It currently, in its current state, you have to chew the sugar, but besides that, it's fine. She says for her steps that the next step is to pour the batter into an oblong pan. I'm assuming this is what she means by oblong pan. Not sure. Hopefully I'm kind of correct. She also says to flour it, so I put a little oil in it. Make sure to get the oil up on all the sides. I don't know how much this cake's going to expand in the oven, but I'm going to flour and oil all the way to the top in case it expands all the way to the top. Better safe than sorry. Sprinkle some flour in here. That's probably way more than I need. All right, now that the flour and oil are in there, what we're going to do is just kind of shake this like so. Kind of let the flour get everywhere that we oil. Since this pan is glass, I'm being a little more gentler than I normally would. Normally, I would be tapping it on the counter to make sure we don't have any big clumps. What I am going to do now, though, is gently tap it and then pour the extra into the trash. Like I said, I'm a little nervous about banging a glass pan against the countertop. It should be able to withstand it in theory, but I'm just paranoid about it. So the flour is a little thicker than I would like, but I think we're just going to have to live with it. So our next step is to pour our batter in here. Okay, I'm just going to spread it out. It's not spreading super well. I think just based on how thick the batter is. There's our lovely batter spread out. We have one more step before it goes in the oven. The next step is to sprinkle a half a cup of brown sugar over the top of this boy. You usually measure brown sugar by compacting it into a cup like this. So since it's hard pack in there, I'm just going to kind of use a fork to loosen it and sprinkle it over the top. Just kind of like so. I don't want to just dig it out because brown sugar will just end up in one giant clump on this thing. Based on the looks of it, it's going to be a lot of brown sugar right in here anyway. I'm trying to spread out the big clumps a little bit. If a big clump escapes here, I've been trying to smooth it out a little bit. Since we're on the end, I'm just going to try and break it up in the cup here and then pour it over top. I'm just trying to break up the big clumps of brown sugar here. Trying to do it kind of gently so it doesn't work its way down into the cake because the instructions say to just pour it over top. I think that's probably good enough. All right, here's what we're looking at. We're going to bake this in a 370 degree oven for 40 minutes. So I'll do that. There is a frosting recipe to go on this, so we'll be making that while this is cooking. All right, our cake has about 13 minutes left to bake. So we're going to start this frosting. First thing you need is 1 stick of oleo melted, which is 1 stick of margarine. If you didn't know what oleo was, there's that. It could be a little more melted. It's a little chunky, but I think it'll be good enough. We need 1 1/4 cup sugar. If you haven't noticed, there's a lot of sugars in this cake. I think it has something to do with the time period. My other grandma, everything had a ton of sugar in it. When I make a recipe from her, you'll see what I mean. I obviously never met my grandma Predmore, so I don't know if she was as bad as my grandma Beckley, but if you told me my grandma Beckley ate brown sugar right out of the bag, I would believe you. I'm going to combine the sugar with the butter so I have less mixing to do at the end. They're pretty well combined. I'll add the next ingredient. I believe she is telling me to add half a tablespoon of vanilla. The next step is 1 small can of evaporated milk. Obviously, reading comprehension is not my strong suit. Obviously, went to public school in Nebraska. So I did not buy a small can of evaporated milk. I bought a regular can of evaporated milk. So I had to Google how much is in a small can of evaporated milk. The answer is 5 ounces. So I went ahead and measured out 5 ounces. I believe it says mix and fold for 2 minutes, I think is what it says. We're more or less making sugary milk again. Some of the older recipes, they like to consider this a frosting or a topping as sugar milk. I understand why she says 2 minutes. It seems like a lot of time to mix this small amount of liquid, but the more that I'm mixing it, the more sugar I'm filling on the bottom. I think it's just to make sure that you have mixed it well enough. I do think this is probably mixed well enough. I'm going to set it to the side. Our cake's going to come out in about 7 minutes. It says to pour this mixture over the cake while it's still warm. I'm going to take still warm as right out of the oven. Just because I can still feel sugar in here, I'm hoping the heat will kind of help dissolve it a little bit. I'll set this to the side and see you in about 7 minutes. Here is our cake straight out of the oven. The top looks a little burnt. It could just be from the brown sugar. I'm not 100% sure. I'm going to go ahead and pour our frosting over it. I feel like frosting is a loose term because it's very runny, but you're supposed to pour it over it while the cake is warm. I just took it out of the oven, so hopefully it's not too warm. There's a lot of sugar left on the sides here, so I'm just going to scoop it out with some of the leftover liquid and try and mix it up a little bit and bring it up here on the sides. I do think maybe some of that burnt look is from the brown sugar on top caramelizing. When sugar gets super hot, it melts and forms caramel. All right, our frosting is on. I think it's probably going to absorb into the cake and loosen some of that hard crust up. We'll have to wait and see. I'm going to set it to the side and probably take some pictures of it later, taste it later, just kind of see how we like it after it's been sitting for a little bit. Something kind of interesting has happened. It's been about 5 minutes since I poured the frosting on top. I don't know how well you can see it. The brown sugar crust looks like it's kind of stayed in place. And then the cake underneath looks like it's kind of sunk a little bit. We definitely have holes that have formed now in the brown sugar crust. I'll let it sit a little bit longer and see what happens.